I just want to pass.
Like a D?
No, a C.
A C?
But I saw my grade and it is kind of like B.
Well, you want just to pass. If you were to find yourself in the presence of Elon Musk, who's got billions of dollars, and he asks you, how much money do you want? Just give me a number, I'll give it to you. How much are you going to ask for? Like $10,000? $1 million? $100 million?
I guess moderate the enough to I don't know to live moderate. I don't want to live expensive because it is by living in luxury. It takes also too much expenses to maintain all those luxuries. So I prefer to live moderate.
Good. You're a saint.
Sorry?
You're a saint.
Thank you.
Eva, you haven't been here for a while. You okay? You what? Oh, okay. Was it like a date? Was it fun? Okay. Avril, how about you? You weren't here on Monday. Yeah? That's good. Myrna, how's your son? Tasha, you weren't here on Monday. Things are good?
There's a lice outbreak in my kid's school. That's happening.
I had lice as a pet when I was back home. Walk him every... All right. I know, it's awful. Well, you know, when you get yourself to Santa Cruz, it's a very, very serious academic environment. You know, instructors as well as students think very highly of themselves. Just take them very seriously. And when the class ends, go somewhere and just laugh. So, yeah. Well, good luck with the kids and the lice and all that. Your husband? Is he laced up too?
No.
Could he be laced up? If he was laced up, would you like lay next to him?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
What kind of a wife are you?
I'm gonna like poke him or something. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, men are disgusting just the way they are. Add lice to it. It's like disgusting times 10. Sarah, anything?
No, that's fair.
Well, you didn't have much to say on yesterday or the day before.
No.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. Brett, anything? Did you guys know that Red just got accepted to Santa Cruz, UC? And he's going to study political science. Just finish it up in a semester or two. And then he's going to apply to Berkeley, UCLA, Santa Barbara, get accepted to one of them.
I got accepted at Santa Barbara.
And you chose Santa Cruz?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't like it's very like frat, like Santa Barbara.
He lives in Oakland, cradle of crime and dirt and trash. That he doesn't mind. A couple of kids, Santa Barbara, throwing parties, that he minds. Ah, Jesus Christ. I mean, they're both good schools. And plus, it's closer to your family.
Yeah.
I mean, who needs them, right?
I want to drive like 5 hours.
You're a good son. As you know, this and next week will be our last meeting.
Yeah.
2 more left. And then, you know. Hello. Is there anything you guys want to talk about? Or should we just like call the day and go home? Eva, anything?
That, like, animals and pets are
Well, if you have a bunch of horses and cattle, sheep running around, having a nice dog that guards your property isn't a bad thing. If you're lonely, sad, miserable, having a pet is not a bad thing. If you have some disabilities, having a pet is not a bad thing. If you're hungry, having a pet and chopping him or her up in the backyard, and it's not a bad thing. Leah, how are you?
here.
Me too. You know, if you're not a pet culture, I mean, I know that when you hang out with anything, after a while, they just grow on you. You know, when I first came to Laney, my first semester, I had a student named Jennifer. It was a world religions class. When the semester ended, she gave me a fish, a bowl of fish. Not edible, I'm just like a bowl with water and a fish, like, you know, running around. Take it home, you know, give it some rice. I wake up the next day and the fish is dead. And I just, you know, I didn't know what to do with it. I went to the mortuary in Oakland, the cemetery, you know, to see how much they charge. There you go. But no, I eventually just throw in the disposal, turn it on, and well, you know, I mean, you're just getting rid of this flesh, but the spirit of the fish lives on. You don't believe in souls? Like fish don't have soul? Yeah, I mean, if, I don't know, if it works for you, it works for you, Eva. You know. I have this painting on the wall in my back room. My brother-in-law wanted to throw it away in the trash, but it was beautiful in my eyes, so I took it. This tiny little hut in the middle of the forest, mountains in the background, this beautiful lake, very serene. And sometimes we have gatherings in the back room. We haven't had them for a while, but sometimes, you know, I sit in the back with some people and I just look at the painting. And I fantasize about, you know, when everybody's asleep, my wife and my kids, very quietly going to the garage, getting my suitcase, you know, packing a few things, and then just running into that cabin. Say, you know, a dog wouldn't be a bad thing. No cats, no parakeets, but a dog, you know, you walk every day with the dog. So I mean, we're all disabled in some shape or form. If your disability is being asocial, not getting along with people, not liking people, being too shy, reserved to open up to people, you've had traumatizing experience in life, pets are not a bad thing. And just in case there's a famine, you can always like chop him up and eat him. He'll be like a sacrificial lamb. Or a sacrificial dog. I'm sorry for this class. I know. You came here. Tasha? Hello, Leah. You look good. Say again? That's not true. Today, there is a glow to you. I don't know where it came from, but you just feel different. That's probably why. It's sweat. Yes. Brett, what's wrong with you? You know, take advantage of all the laughter you can get in this class, because once you get to Santa Cruz, you're just going to be screwed.
I like remove myself from the class. It's like I can't control the laughter. It's so bad. It's like the funniest person I've ever met.
Well, you know, if you try really hard to hold your laughter, you may fart. And that'd be far more embarrassing. I'm sorry, Mirna.
You always have a straight face.
I'm sorry, Tasha, you were saying. Say, do you have one? So I suppose there are go ahead. Can you do it one more time? That's like Beethoven. We are reactionary animals. You know, life really is this huge organism that the only thing it does, knowingly or unknowingly, it just creates experiences or creates events. And when events come your way, to some you can relate, to others you can't. And it also depends on your needs. If I have let's say, a cold or a flu, I'm sitting in my office and I'm looking around my office and I'm about to sneeze or my nose is dripping. I have a lot of sheets of paper. I have lots of shoes, lots of shirts, microwave, fridge, but I'm only really looking for tissues. And despite my eyes looking all over the office, I can only relate to the thing that I need, which is napkins. Yeah. So, despite life throwing all these different events at you, your options will be very, very limited if you know what exactly it is that you need. Usually when events come your way, depending on the intensity of those events, they have a tendency of consuming you. You know, you go home, your companion looks at you and says some nasty thing to you or tries to be funny, but you take it the wrong way. And you consume with anger or frustration. If you happen to be like Tasha and myself and a few other people in this room with kids, you know, you sit them down, try to knock some sense into their thick concrete of a brain, and you realize it just doesn't sink. And so instead of sitting back and saying, well, why is my son going to school in the first place? It doesn't work that way. Most of us parents, without really knowing, are far too concerned. We react, sometimes maturely, most often, in a very uncivilized way. And so when events come your way, they just consume you. And when you're consumed like anything else in life, you don't really have the mental capacity or the space to detach yourself from the experience, look at the event and your reaction to the event, and come to a relatively sane conclusion. If, on the other hand, you're tired of, I suppose, just having life inspire emotions about you and you just simply react to them, after a while you say, you know what, I am so tired of being an emotional junkie. Every 5 minutes I react to this, every 10 minutes I react to that. And I think for the most part, that's why people go to therapy shops. They have tried, for the first few 10, 15, 20 years. Hello, Jesse. Oh, you come here free. No backpack, no pants, no shirt. Good for you. And so, initially, you say, I have every right to be angry at my dad or at my mom or whatever. And that anger serves you well, I think, for the first few years of your life. After a while, you realize that without your knowing, you have lived a life filled with anger. You've always reacted to events in a negative way, and your life, everything that you touch kind of just dies. And at a certain point, you begin to observe, why life is the way it is, why you are the way you are, and you try to fix it as best as you possibly can, only to realize, you just can't do it on your own. So you take your sorry behind to a therapist office, and when you go to the therapist office, you're forced to observe. And the problem with observation is you have to remove yourself from your history. And if you examine your history is really who and what you are. It's like me looking at Tasha and saying to her, don't look at yourself as an African American. Which is a very, very difficult thing to do, because it is what has defined her life. Most of the concerns that she has for her kids are defined within that particular context. And so when you go to the therapist office, the task is for you to be removed from your history. Your history has stories. Stories create emotions, create identity, meaning, purpose. And so the task of the therapist is not for you to be consumed with your past, but to take some distance and simply to observe. There is this, I think, first layer of reflection, which is you sit back, you observe, and then you reflect on the things that you are seeing, observing, taking notes on. It's very individualistic. It's a very small world, but it's really, really good, because for the first time you're able to remove yourself from your history, observe, and reflect on the things that you're observing. And then I suppose at a later stage, you try to find a way to overcome all the things that have created obstacles or hindrances to your life, which is really good. The second aspect of reflection has nothing to do with you removing yourself from your life. It has a more, I suppose, universal or cosmic feature to it, in the sense that, I'll give you a story that I shared with my class yesterday. In the Greek world, there was a king. His name was Midas. You're a king. You have all this power in your life. You can do whatever, like Donald Trump. I suppose at a certain point, he gets tired of being in the cradle of power. And one of the things that power does really is that, one of the problems with privileged people and I suppose all of us are privileged to some extent. I'm basically referring to my own kids. As an immigrant, when I first came here, I had to wash dishes, be a janitor, Church's Fried Chicken, graveyard shifts. I was a maid at Davis Motel for many, many years. I washed cars. And when I went back home, I realized that, money is so tight for people. And for the first 2-3 weeks of coming back to America, I would not spend $1 on buying a coffee, because $1 in Persian currency, you could buy buckets of food for people. And I would say, why would I want to spend $1 or $1.50 on a cup of coffee when I can just make it at home? You become very frugal. My kids don't have any of those sensibilities, which makes them profoundly stupid, So I suppose King Midas at a certain point in his life grows tired of his privilege. And when you grow tired of your privilege and your purchasing power, you can purchase men and women and basically life. At a certain point, you just get bored. And he goes to this person, this mythical figure, and I think his name is Silenus. Silenus is a companion to Dionysus. Now, in the Greek world, there are two interesting forces in life. There is the Apollonian, which is a more rational, a more just, a more reasonable force that consumes your life. The other force is Dionysian. Dionysus is interesting. One day he just goes somewhere, sees some grapes, eats the grapes, lays in the sun, and the heat of the sun and all the grape juices in his belly, turns into wine. He gets drunk, and in his drunkenness, his history fades, his desires fade, and what lives inside him comes out. He becomes irrational. He becomes asocial in the sense that society no longer has the power to tame him the way it has. He becomes very creative. He becomes spontaneous. And so King Midas goes to Silenus and says, what is best for human beings? And I'm guessing that particular question means, what is the best way to live? What is the best way to think? What is the best way to be? What is the best way to spend time, given that our lives are so short? And Silenus laughs and laughs and laughs and laughs at the stupidity of the question and the ignorance of King Midas. And we're not talking about Shakespearean time, where once a year a joker comes to the king's court and makes fun of the king and his kingdom, so that the king can be reminded that he too is human, all too human, and he too makes mistakes. And, at first, Midas doesn't really know how to deal with Silenus's laughter. He kind of feels embarrassed, he feels cheapened, he also feels angry and stupid for having gone before this particular god. And again, he asks the question, what is the best way? What is best for humankind? And Silenus looks at him and says, are you sure you want the answer? He says, yes. It is out of your reach. Don't ask it. It's kind of like what the gods tell Gilgamesh. What are you doing here? And he says, I fell in love and life killed the person I loved. I've come to realize money doesn't mean that much. Sex doesn't mean that much. People don't mean that much. Power doesn't mean that much. Eventually, everything is stolen by life. Give me something. I'm looking for something that can't be touched by life. I want eternality. I want immortality. And the gods look at Gilgamesh and say, these are sacred grounds. You have no place here. Go back home. Live your life. These questions are far too big for you. And again, of course, Gilgamesh persists, and eventually he finds the answer, but that's for a different day, a different class. And Midas begs this demon, Selena's, please give me the answer. You know, I'm a king, I can create justice for my people and make them happy and all that. And Selena says, what is best for human beings is for them to have never been born. Consider that for a moment. It never ends. You know, you get out of your mother's belly, even in her belly, you know, sometimes she eats the wrong foods and you throw up in her stomach. Sometimes she's just sitting all day watching Rambo movies and you say, come on, man, get up, move, I need some exercise. Sometimes she walks around too much and you say, please sit down, you're exhausting me. I mean, you're not even out yet and you complain and you express your complaints in very creative ways. And then you come out and you start your life with a whimper. You scream and you cry. And then you have no control over your body, you know. You pee your pants and someone has to come over there and take care of you. You're weak, incompetent in so many ways. And you remain incompetent the day you die. Because at different stages of your life, different questions come up. And then you realize how ignorant you are. And the previous questions, the previous answers don't really mean much anymore. The nice thing about not having been born in the first place is that you don't have to confront all the complexities of life. You don't have to confront what it means to be young, what it means to be an adolescent, what it means to be a young adult, what it means to be an adult, what it means to get old, and what it means to get sick, and what it means to die and leave everything behind. And once in a while you sit back and you reflect on the entirety of your life and you realize it's been a complete waste. And I'm not quite sure why we feel that way. I mean, I feel my life has been a complete waste, and it's not because I've been a bad son to my parents, and it's not because I've been a bad instructor to my students. It's not because I've been a bad father, a bad husband. The truth is there is something about human beings that condemns them for simply being human. I want to have sex, but I want to have it with meaning. I want to just have food, but I want to approach food with grace and dignity, to be respectful towards all the forces that has given birth to pizza. You know, go back to Schopenhauer. You know, I can't be the creation of a perfect God. My eyesight is bad. My heart is bad. My back can't bend. My knees are broken all the time. How can a good, perfect God create an entity with so many flaws? Can't be a good God. It's something that Jesus had spoken of in the Gospel of Judas, that all of us have come to believe in God in the wrong ways. This world is not created by a God that's good, that's benevolent, that's compassionate, that's perfect, you know. So that's one of the positives of not being born. And of course, you know, this is America, all of us are hippies, and our conclusion is, you know, life offers you experiences, you learn, you grow, you get wisdom, you share it with other people. You know, that's our salvation. Justification of existence that's quite pathetic most often. And Midas complains to Selena, saying, you know, that's a stupid thing for you to say. I am already here. I've been born. So for you to tell me that it's best not to be born, it's a little too late for that. Can you tell me the second best thing? Again, Selena laughs and says, are you sure? Yes. Because the first one is pretty miserable. Give me the second one. Pray so that you may die soon. If I was to be very, very honest, I would say that there is a good part of me that's profoundly scared of my kids' future in this culture. I don't know where it comes from. maybe all the things I see are just projections of my own, mental faculties, but I don't know if they will ever be able to afford buying a house. I don't know if they will ever be mature enough to hold on to a relationship. I don't know if they'll ever encounter a man or a woman or a companion that has a good amount of maturity to them. I don't know if they'll suffer from loneliness and boredom that turns into chronic depression. I don't know if they'll have companionship with the wrong people that will lead them astray. I mean, it's very frightening. And so sometimes I say to myself, maybe, if I was to die, I wouldn't be seeing any of those things. Maybe in death, ultimately I can find rest and peace, because you need to have a tremendous amount of courage to be a parent and watch your kids grow in a culture that does not nourish them in a healthy way. It's like when you go to Lucky's to buy something and you look at all the ingredients and you say, oh shit, I'm not going to eat all of this. It's going to kill me. And sometimes you look at the culture and you look at all the ingredients in the culture and you say, man, this is the stuff that my kids are going to eat. They're going to end up at Kaiser. And, sometimes this is I suppose, the ultimate stage of reflection. When you sit back and you kind of look at life with big eyes, not small, individualized, personal eyes, but big eyes. And you say to yourself, okay, I want to sit back and think about what it means to be a human being. And you come to realize being a human being is nothing but an entity that has desires. That is the thing that fuels us. Without desires, you would go nowhere. I mean, the reason why all of you are here, you have a certain desire. You may not know what that is. It may not be as clear as you would want it to be. But you can't function without desires. Desires are like GPS to your life. You wake up and you say, okay, I got to take a shower, head to class. That's a desire. Why? Because of a grade. Desire creates, depending, of course, and desire evolves. The moment you have a desire, there is a poverty that grows inside you. That poverty will either be terminated because it's just a need, and other things will come in its place, and that desire will be demolished and another one come in its place, or the desire will turn into a need. And the moment the desire turns into a need, you are really, really poor, because now you have an emotional relationship with the desire. And then you say, okay, how do I satisfy this desire? And then like a beggar, you go out there looking for tools, because without tools, nothing can be satisfied. You want an A, you got to go to class. You want to make money, you got to sacrifice 40 hours a week to make some money. You want a shelter, find yourself a place. So anything that you want in your life, you need tools. And so you go on this quest, and eventually you'll find the proper tools. Eventually, like our good friend Rhett here, he has found the tool to graduate, which is a desire, whether it's by society created, whether it's by parents, whether he's seen it on YouTube, doesn't really matter how the desire came about. The point is, without desire, you won't survive. There comes a point that if he is lucky, if he's taken all the right steps and has all the right tools, he'll get a letter or an email that, congratulations, Rhett Bernard, I don't know what your last name is, you have successfully finished your bachelor's degree. Come to the ceremony and grab your diploma. He's very excited. And that desire is still alive. And then, of course, he walks on the stage and he's very, very happy and excited, shakes hands. His parents are happy. He throws his cap into the heavens. He walks down, he shows this diploma to his friends, posts it on YouTube or Instagram. And at a certain point, something tragic happens. The piece of paper no longer interests him. The desire dies. And then he sits back and says, man, I went to school for 4, 5, 10 years. Lots of agitation, frustration, irritation. So many of my hopes were crushed. So many of them came true. I worked really hard. I'm very proud of myself. I have this piece of paper, and yet, for some strange reason, it means nothing. And then you say, okay, let me see if other aspects of life fall into this particular mapping. And you say, man, I got married. It was very exciting. Then it became very much like a diploma. I looked at my wife, or I looked at my husband, and it felt nothing. I bought a house, very much like a diploma. It felt really, really good. And then I felt nothing. I love my kids, and once in a while I come home, there they are, and I feel nothing about them, And you realize you have tapped into a layer of reflection that examines life in a very rigorous way. And the problem with this particular kind of reflection is that nothing survives it. One of the problems with Socrates, if you were to ever encounter a Socrates out there, is that he wants you to make him understand why you are the way you are, why you believe in the things you believe in, why you're pursuing certain desires. And the problem with someone like Socrates, who's like a Magnus Carlsen of philosophy or reflection, is that you'll always be checkmated. Always. There is no escape. So when people, sometimes they get into these ridiculous, childish, infantile, stupid debates, whether in high school or college or a 4-year school. On one side, you have the atheists. On the other side, you have the Christians. And the Christians are trying to prove to the atheists that God exists. And then the atheists, depending how versed they are in their study and knowledge of the Old and the New Testament, they'll bring up verses, and there are so many that contradict one another. And if you happen to be a very honest Christian or a Muslim or a Buddhist, at the end of the day, you'll walk away saying, I think Christianity is a joke. And so what you're dealing with is Midas, who has found himself in the presence of a God, who stands outside, looks at life, looks at human beings, looks at human life, looks at human pursuits, desires, who they are, what becomes of them. And maybe very much like Zeus, comes to realize maybe humanity should be destroyed. Maybe we should create the flood and get rid of the whole thing. Because whatever human beings touch, they destroy, whether it's dolphins or whales or plants or dogs or cats or other human beings, society, money. It matters very little what human beings do. Whatever they do, eventually it gets destroyed. Now, I don't really know if it's good to think like that. I think it's good to kind of sit back and be in the second stage of reflection. You look at your society and you say, okay, how do I make it better? Have hope in that. Don't be like Silenus. Don't be like the Jesus in the Gospel of Judas. Don't be like a Socrates, who eventually comes down and says, you know what? I tried. I really did try to make Athens a good place. I did really try to make politicians educated. I really tried to make my people, the people I love, think a little bit better about life, about who and what they are. And in the end, I've come to realize my efforts have been a complete waste. Give me the hemlock. Let me drink the poison. Let me die. And maybe if I have a soul, and maybe if I enter the domain of God, maybe I can sit and talk to the gods. Maybe for the first time I will experience what a really good conversation feels like and looks like and tastes like. I don't know if it's worth being around someone like a Socrates, because you will be removed from life and you will be on this quest to look for things that life can't give you. Now, let me also add another component to this, which is, I think someone like a Socrates, someone like a Jesus, someone like a Silenus, someone like a Zeus, someone like a parent, or someone like a son who has come to understand a few things about parenthood. A son or a daughter who has overcome some of the abuses suffered by the hands of their own parents. You live in this psychological cave. It's dark, it's gruesome, it's chaotic. Eventually you find a way out. You see the sun, you see the light, you understand a few things. And what you do is something about you has beautified itself. Anger has become the foundation for insight and wisdom and compassion and forgiveness. And you take those enlightened feelings and ideas back into the cave. You knock on your dad's door, your mom's door, your sibling's door, and you say, I forgive you. Kind of like the madman in Thus Spoke Zarathustra by Friedrich Nietzsche. And then as a son, as you're talking to your father about all the abuse that he imposed on you, and you've understood why, and you have forgiven him, and you try to kind of tell him the reasons as to why you're back and why you want to have a conversation with him, and you realize that he doesn't get it. And very much like, again, the madman, you look at your father and you say, I think I have come far too early. It seems that even thunder needs time to reach the ears of men. My father is 70 or 80, but he doesn't yet have the maturity to hear what I have to tell him. So you walk away. I think sometimes, whether your reflection is cosmic or it's personal, but you have gained some maturity, some insight and wisdom from them, you come down to share that with other people only to realize your only gift is being rejected. And that's going to leave a very bad taste in your mouth. And then maybe you'll have a prayer taught to you by this ancient God, which is, I became Narcia. I grew tired of my reflections, which were a lie. I went on this quest to really see what I look like underneath the waves. And I eventually understood who I am and what I am. Now I'm going to go back into society and tell my dad, tell my mom, tell my friends, tell my companion, tell my kids. And by tell, I mean teach. Share with them your insights, only to realize that Santa Cruz, Yale, Oxford, all these institutions are PLOs, SLOs, ILOs, CLOs, whatever, that they in fact have found a way that the ancients didn't know, which is we have found a way to teach, we have found a way to educate, only to realize that despite all of your cunningness, your hands are tied. You can't teach anyone who's not ready to learn. And you don't really know how anybody gets ready to learn. And then all of a sudden you remember, Silenus, pray to die soon. Wisdom is too heavy a cross to be carried on a daily basis. I don't know if you've ever read Thus Spoke Zarathustra. It's a book that Leah is beginning to read and she's enjoying it very much. It's just the first few pages. Zarathustra has lived in this cave for about 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. He has some wisdom now. God has embraced him. He comes down and says, I need to share my wisdom with other people. And on his way to the city, he runs into a saint. He runs into this, I don't know, a homeless man, at least. That's what he looks like on the outside. He says, where are you going? This old man asks him, I'm going to the city. Why? I'm going to teach my people the ways of God. I'm going to tell them how to be a Superman, how they need to overcome themselves, how now that they have killed God, you need to be your own God, but you need to make sure that the God that lives inside you is not a false God. Fall in love. There is nothing wrong with Eros. There is nothing wrong with Aphrodite. There is nothing wrong with Venus. There is nothing wrong with agape. Just make sure it's not ludus. Make sure you don't mistake love for lust or lust for love. You know? And the old man looks at Zoroaster, this young kid, and says, why are you wasting your time? Why are you wasting your life? Why are you wasting your energy? They're not going to respect you. They're not going to appreciate you. Keep your reflections to yourself. If you want to scream, scream to the heavens. If you want to dance, dance to the woods. You know, don't approach people. And Zoroaster says, no, I'm going to go. I believe in people. Only to realize near the end that the only thing that people will eventually do is make fun of you. As we made fun of Malcolm and Martin, as we made fun of Jesus and Muhammad and the Buddha and Jesus and Moses. That's what we do. Because at least what Nietzsche told us, for us modern people, is that something we talked about the other day, which is we don't want to be an Ubermensch. We don't want to create a real deity inside ourselves. I rather dance to the music created by Beyonce and Eminem. It's too difficult for me to become an artist, to find the instrument that works for me, to learn that instrument. I don't want to read notes, and I don't want to learn how to read notes. And I don't want to keep practicing to stretch out my fingers to play the piano or the guitar. It's too much. I'd rather just YouTube them. And so in the end, Zoroaster walks away saying, modern people reflect, not because they want truth. Modern people reflect because they want to be happy. And your reflection is limited to, should I watch NBC or ABC? Should I worship Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos? Should I look at Kim Kardashian or Angelina Jolie? If I was to be yeah, this is a shitty class. Hush. Leah.
I guess removing humans from nature.
From nature?
Yeah, like the industrial revolution, agriculture being largely an industrial playground. Humans or regular people are not so much as a part of food webs or the process of cultivating land or raising cattle or anything like that. I was wondering if there were, I guess, vegans, and there's people who have this idea that it's inherently unethical to eat that humans shouldn't eat meat, and there are other people who are saying, humans are animals. A bear would not fault itself for eating because it's I guess. I was wondering if the Industrial Revolution had an influence on those people, since we aren't really active in the food web are?
I can't really answer that question, Leah, except to say that I hope, if you're religious, maybe hope and pray that you'll find the job that'll make you tons of money. Then, let's say you still have the desire to stay in Oakland, live in Oakland. Drive on Skyline Boulevard by Skyline High School. You'll find these beautiful, huge ranch-style houses. You know, the house may be 2,000 square feet, but the property is like about 2, 3, 4, 5 acres. You still live in the city, but you're surrounded by trees and animals. If you find your space, your home sufficient for your life, most often you just walk around your own house, and front yard, backyard. Once in a while you feel as if you need to see people, look at people. There is a story by Idris Shah. Idris Shah is, I think, this Afghani who was born and raised in England. He specialized in this particular branch of Islam called Sufism. He has tons of books out there. Some of his best books are Learning How to Learn, The Commanding Self, and many others. You can check him out. He said that he had sat in his apartment and he was reading and writing for a month and a half straight. He wouldn't leave his house. And whenever he wanted food, he would just call his kids and his wife to bring him some food, but he just didn't leave the house. He said at a certain point, he just grew tired of himself and his books and his writing, and I suppose himself. He said, I just need to look at some people. He went out for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes and then came home. I went back home. There are two ways to look at society, and there are two ways to look at nature, I suppose. All of us in this class have had moments where writing becomes very natural, very organic. It's like you're not socialized anymore. You're sitting and you're just like writing, and you don't know where it's coming from. It's kind of like, all these years you've been taught to contain your emotions, hold your emotions within, as Freud would say, repress them, suppress them. And at a certain point, you being a 22, 23, 25-year-old young woman, it just happens to be an off day for you. You're very sensitive, you're very open to all the forces out there, and even though you happen to be an atheist, you see a church, and you realize the doors are open, you walk through the doors, even though you hate religion, you hate God, everything about religion and God. And for some strange reason, you begin to appreciate, the painted glasses, the ridiculous cross that's there, and for some strange reason, you just kneel and you begin to sob. You've become part of nature. All the ways of society has tried to tame you for the past 20, 30 years. It's no longer around your neck. You're unleashed. That's what revolutions are all about, I don't know who does your taxes. As I was doing them, I was writing checks to this fucking government that cares only for the politicians and nothing for the citizens. I say to myself, how is it possible that someone like a Trump pays nothing And someone like me has to pay all this money. Why? But the truth is, there isn't much I can do. I go back into hiding to some branch that society has created for me. I forget the whole scenario. I become passive, indifferent. You and I can't go to the Yosemite and live there for the rest of our lives. It's just not possible. Your question, in as much as I think it's very, very interesting, I could give you the history of the Industrial Revolution and it came about. I don't find it interesting. I don't find it interesting because the truth is, the reality of my life is I live in society. I am contaminated by it. I give stupid grades to people. Once in a while, I do go to Yosemite, and after spending like 4, 5, 6 days there, I say to myself, why am I going back to Oakland? It has nothing to offer me. And all of a sudden, my wife says, honey, are you ready? You know, it's like you wake up from this beautiful dream. Go back to the Epic of Gilgamesh. Enkidu, a man who is naked, lives in the forest. Gilgamesh, a man who is clothed, who lives in the city. 10,000 years ago, we were all told that city is always a place where you become contaminated. 3 kids. You don't think Tasha ever, as a mother, sits back and says, I miss my kids running around and breaking things. They're just sitting there, you know. He plays with his cell phone, he plays with his laptop, he plays with himself. You know. Go ahead, Red. There you go, good job. There is a different way of looking at this. If you can find yourself in the presence of a person or a community that has found its organic, natural, supple nature, hang around with them. Conversation just flows. What are you doing? Whatever. What do you want to talk about? Whatever. You know, and you say to them, well, I got work. Just call in sick. Okay. And the truth is, it's what makes these revolutionaries so dangerous, because they want to destroy a system that has caged all of us. It doesn't answer your question, it doesn't matter. Yes, Eva. Tasha.
Is polyogamy ethical?
What? Oh, you mean like
Multiple wives.
we are far too primitive for all that. I mean, look, you already are without knowing it. The very fact that, so there is the physical aspect of polygamy, and then there is the emotional, intellectual aspect of polygamy. The physical aspect, unfortunately or fortunately, falls within the scope of morality, that many cultures around the world kind of prohibit you from having multiple wives and multiple husbands. In environments that they do allow for such practices, the elements of jealousy and possessiveness don't really exist as intensely as they do for monogamous environments. But no one can see that emotionally you are not as interested in your husband as you are with the butcher. So when you are intimate with your husband, you are thinking about the butcher. I mean, that's one of the things that Jesus talks about. You know, Moses is mostly physical stuff. Moses is earthly. You know, when you look at especially the last 6 commandments, it really just has to do with just life down here. The first 4 are a little different. Jesus does not care about the last 6 of the commandments. He only thinks about the first 4. You know, and the first 4 has to do with mentally. If you can purify your mental space, that mental space will hold your physical body in hostage. It won't let your body do things that the mind doesn't think it's appropriate. You know. So I think to maybe revise your question, it would be the following. There is a huge or vast difference between intellectual polygamy and physical polygamy. One is allowed to be practiced on a daily basis because it's unseen to the people around us. The other is not allowed because of religion, because of morality, because of social codes. Good morning, Ining. How are you? It's good to see you. How's Kimia? I think the emotional intellectual is just fine. I mean, I'm not Jesus Christ, I'm not a monk, I'm just a regular chap. There is about 90% of my life is lived in the world of Caesar. I need money. I worry about old age. I worry about getting sick. I worry about my kids. So I try to hold my life together as best as I possibly can. So even though intellectually I have the freedom to roam around the world and, you know, be with whatever, physically, it's not possible. If your question is monogamy natural? I would say to you the following. I think we gravitate towards anything that we find beautiful. We are beauty-seeking machines, and I don't know where it comes from. And I think that's what evolution is all about. Evolution is discontent, unhappy, miserable with the way things are. It's always trying to make things better, you know. And I don't think you get married to the person you love. I think you get married to your projection of what you think beauty is. And it's just a matter of time before time reveals to you that, you know, you don't really love your husband all that much, or your wife. You know, you don't really love your kids. What you love about your kids is success. You know, that they can sit back and say, Dad, I think I made all the right choices in life, you know. So the only thing we can be monogamous towards ideas. Nothing down here. But
Sexuality. I know a lot about attraction. But I would think
for the most part, it's stupid. I mean, I only say that because I'm almost dead. You should look at sex, I think, in this particular way, that two things coming together, you know. sometimes when it comes to human beings, you can have two very active forces, or you could have one active, one passive. When it comes to my relationship with my cup that has tea in it, the cup is passive. I am on the top, the cup is in the bottom. That whenever I desire it, I stretch out my arms, I pick it up, I put it to my mouth. So there is always going to be a unity, a coming together between a desire coming true, And whatever it is that you gravitated towards, it is so because you project a good amount of pleasure in it by pursuing it. Okay? So I think a more mature, civilized way to look at sex, despite the many, very many functions that it serves, on a very basic level, is that it's really two forces finding each other attractive and coming together. And then it ends when the desire has been satisfied. If you happen to be somewhat mature, you continue with the relationship, and then you get married and you have children, if you're talking about human beings. There is a part of you that can come to the surface only through the act of sex. Like anything else in life, you can sit and eat your food like a pig, or you can approach it very respectfully. You kind of figure out where this food came from, how many hands went into creating this food, how did the universe play its part in creating this particular food, how long did it take you or your wife to chop things together. I mean, all these things are like on a cross being chopped just for you, for your benefit. My sister-in-law, before she passed, she would come to the house quite often. And by quite often, I mean like every night. And I'm a pig. I don't much care about morality or ethics or God or religion or philosophy. None of those things are important for me. The moment food is placed before me, I just attack it, And then every time Lula would come by, she would look at me. I say, oh God, here we go again. I have to hold myself for 15 minutes. She sits there, she closes her eyes, her hands are clenched, and her mouth begins to move. She goes on and on and on. And I say, Lula, please. Amir, be quiet, I'm in a trance. What are you doing? I'm thanking God, I'm thanking people, I'm thanking the cows, I'm thanking the grass, I'm thanking the sun, the earth, the wind. I'm starving, Lula, can you please end it? And you realize that, and then she would eat her food. I have this friend, her name is Cassie. By the time I've done, finished 5 sandwiches, she's still on her first bite. She eats so slow, and I keep asking her, Cassie, what is wrong with you? Of course, I have never in the past 25 years. She just eats slow. I don't know whether she's praying or thanking or being thankful. So the point I'm trying to make is, there is something about us human beings, and I don't really know what it is. I think just being raw is not enough for us. We create rituals. We create philosophies. We create ideas to spice things up. What is sex? A penis going into a vagina, or penis going into an ass, or whatever. And that's what it is. But no, that's not what we do. We romanticize it. And I think the better question is, why do we do that? There is this need inside us. We, in some ways, profoundly dislike and despise simply being mere animals. So my recommendation is, if you're at a place in life where you look at sex as a tool that can help you think better, have a different self-image, Read all the texts that are out there. The Golden Lotus is good. Kama Sutra is good. I mean, Kama Sutra is interesting in the sense that in its very, introductory pages, it just tells you, just don't have sex in a casual way. It's like the Hebrew alphabets. They all have meaning. All these positions that you and I get into, they have meaning. Study them, understand them. We have numerology, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It makes no sense. How could they have meaning? But they do. Astrology, they do. We're not satisfied with the tables and chairs of life. We want something more. Now, it may all be fantasy, it may all be ridiculous, but the truth is, who cares? They make you better. They make you reflect. I mean, you can go home and just eat a toast and a glass of water. You can do that. But that's not what you do. You make yourself like a cheese sandwich. You add some salt, pepper, some spices, and all of a sudden, you transform bread, you transform cheese, you transform water into something else. That's what we like to do. We're all like alchemists. We're scientists, And you've experienced this. I mean, you're a young man, you have a companion. There are days you go very, very slow. And there are days you act like an animal. And I think the better question is sit back and ask why. There are two different rats functioning in two very radically different ways. One rat is uneducated, illiterate, doesn't care. You just go and eat like a pig. The other, it's magic. Maybe you've seen your girlfriend in the kitchen, slaving away, cooking this beautiful food for 5 hours. And out of respect for that, something about you wakes up and you approach it in a way that you've never done before. Your question is also generated by a man, which you are. A men's approach to sex is very different than women's approach to sex. Men's body is very different than a woman's body. If you go back to some of the narratives that come from the ancient world, again, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, you may be fine walking around the lake. The moment your eyes fall on a woman that it finds, or your eyes find attractive, all of a sudden you find yourself to be very poor. Poor in the sense that you are lonely, poor in the sense that all of a sudden you're attracted, poor in the sense that all of a sudden you have this desire, poor in the sense that you want to get to know who she is, what she is, and poor in the sense that ultimately you want your body to be united with hers. That particular layer that you go through happens to a man far more quickly than it does to a woman as she looks at a man. There is something about women that make men feel poor. And this poverty can only be overcome through the act of sex. It completes you as a man. But without the knowledge of yourself and without the knowledge of the woman and without the knowledge of this tool we call sex, it could lead into guilt, which adds more to your poverty. I was going to say something else, but I forgot. So good luck. But if you're at a place in life where you just don't want to have simple, basic, secret pleasures, go to what we talked about earlier in this class, which is reflect. Ask yourself why. Put this component called desire under a microscope, and then in your head it'll unfold. You will know exactly how it's going to end up. One of the best examples I can give you is Abelard. Abelard and his companion, I think her name was Eloise or something. They were lovers, but we're talking about like the Middle Ages. You can't really go out there and have sex with people casually. So one of the ways they expressed their love and their emotional and intellectual, desire for sex with one another was through love letters. Then Abelard was also a political fellow. He said all these nasty things about the king. And so the king had him castrated. His privates were cut off. It's like someone wanting a mansion, but they don't have any money. All you have is an imagination. And so you take up writing and you write about the mansion that you could never really have, but your book becomes the bestseller. Abelard, in one of his letters to Eloise, says to her that all these years that I have loved you, I think I have loved you in the wrong way. And I have loved you in the wrong way because I had a penis. Now that I don't have one, I can truly love you with my soul. That I don't need my physical body to be grinded against yours to experience love and the magic that it brings about. I can love you emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually without those things ever being contaminated by the physical body. It's beautiful. What time is it? Anyone knows? What? What time are we done? You guys made me late. I have an appointment. But listen, I'm sorry for today's class. Especially Mirna, I'm very sorry. It was boring, slow, useless. I agree with you. It's good to see all of you. I apologize. I have to go to Kaiser and get my blood drawn